How's it going, everybody? It's Ryan Donkin, possibly also known as GR_Donkin on MTGO, and I'm here to talk to you about some hypogeometrics in Magic the Gathering. So I went on an interview with Nikachu, and a lot of people, well, it was noted that I use hypogeometrics when I'm playing, and a couple people thought that was really interesting. I had a couple people ask me to talk more about it. I said, should I make a YouTube video? And a lot of people said I should. So here I am. Just want to give a quick disclaimer. I'm not a big math guy. Like, I don't have a math degree. I'm going to try to make this as accessible as possible. I know not everybody is super into math, but this is definitely useful, and it's going to give you some level up moments. I know it's been very useful for me. And yeah, let's learn a couple things. So here we go. All right, so why use this? Why use a hypogeometric distribution? It allows you to make informed mulligan decisions. So you can look at your hand and say, if you've ever looked at your hand and you said, should I keep this? You are probably trying to do a hypogeometric calculation. You're thinking, what can I draw to make this hand keepable? What do I need for this hand to work? This also gives you more agency as a player, and I personally use it as a way to try and tilt off less, because instead of saying, oh, I just got unlucky, you can actually find out if you made a bad keep or if you genuinely got unlucky through using these techniques. It is also useful when in deck building, when you think about cards like Collected Company and Dig Through Time, and Spoils the Vault as well. You can say, all right, if I'm playing Collected Company, I can use a hypogeometric calculation to see how likely I am to hit two creatures. I can use a hypogeometric calculation to determine how likely I am to see two particular cards with Dig Through Time. And similarly, you can do that with Spoils. All right, so this is the calculator. This calculator can be found on stattrek.com, and I'll be sure to leave a link in the description for this. If you ever see me doing a calculation on stream, I have this calculator set up on my other computer. So this is what I use. This is what you should use. It works really well for me. So this is what the calculator looks like. And this is what all the things mean. So population size, let's get the little pointer going. Population size is the number of unknown cards in your deck. So if you're playing a deck and you scry things to the bottom, then you know you're not going to possibly draw them or see them on the top, right? So we can exclude those. Obviously, if you shuffle your library, all the cards are unknown. So this is typically going to be 53. Even if you take a London Mulligan, it's still going to be 53 cards unknown because you're putting two cards on the bottom of your deck. Still 53 unknown cards. All right. Number of successes. This is going to be the number of hits in your deck. Like the number of cards you're looking for. Like I just need to hit one land. You know, if you have 20 lands in your deck, you have 20 hits, right? How many looks you have is your sample size. So let's say you're like, I have 5 turns to draw one land. That means you have 5 looks. All right. How many hits you need? I always put 1 down. I would suggest in doing this, unless you have a reason not to, you should just put 1, because usually you just need one thing to win the game, one copy of the card. If you need to hit 2 lands by turn 4 or something, then you would put 2, but typically you just want to do 1. Great. So hypogeometric probability. The really the important one to use out of all these drop downs is the cumulative probability. I don't know how to get this to stop popping up, but the one on the very bottom, the probability that X is greater than or equal to your number of successes. So let's say you need to hit 1 copy of a card in the top 4. Greater than or equal to allows for 2 or more copies to be in your top 4. So it's going to give you the most accurate number. All right, let's move on. Let's do some practice hands, just to, kind of illustrate the point. All right, so let's practice with TRON. How likely are you to assemble TRON on turn 3? So let's look at this hand, right? We have 2 TRON pieces. We got the power and the mine. All we need is the tower. Also, sorry, let's assume that we're on the play for all of these scenarios. On the play, we need TRON on turn 3. So we've got our first draw step on turn 2, our second draw step on turn 3, and we have 2 redraws with Chromatic Sphere and Chromatic Star. All right. How many hits do you have? And how many looks do you have? I'm going to give you a second to pause the video. I'm going to encourage you to pull up the calculator in the description down below so that you can give this a try. All right. So we have 4 hits and we have 4 looks. The reason we have 4 hits is because we have 4 towers in our library, and we have 4 looks because we have 2 draw steps and 2 redraws with our sphere and star. So let's see how this looks on the calculator. We have a population size of 53 because we have 53 unknown cards in the deck. We have 4 successes because we have 4 towers. We have a sample size of 4, 2 draw steps, 2 redraws, and the number of successes in our sample, we want 1 tower to make this work. So if we look at the probability x equals 1, we have a 25% chance of drawing exactly 1 tower in the top 4 cards. But if you remember, we want at least 1 tower. So we're going to look at the very bottom, circled in red, cumulative probability, x is greater than or equal to 1. You have a 27.64% chance of hitting TRON on turn 3 with that hand. So let's back that up for a second. Maybe this is a mulligan, right? Like, I can imagine a new player looking at this hand like, oh my god, I'm so close to TRON, I just need the tower, it's great. But in reality, you only have a 27% chance to hit it. Probably a mulligan, right? We're learning. Now let's practice with dredge. Let's assume we have 10 dredgers in our deck, and of course we're on the play. How likely are you to hit a dredge creature with Shriekhorn before you draw? All right, I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna encourage you to pause here. Use your calculator. Think about how are we defining a hit? How are we defining a look? All right. Great. So as we can read on Shriekhorn here, it enters with 3 charge counters on it, and you can remove it. You can remove 2 the turn you play it, untap, remove 2 again. So that means we have 4 looks. And of course, we have 1 dredge creature in our hands, which means there are 9 dredgers left in our library. So we have 4 looks, 9 hits. Let's see how this looks on our calculator. So we have a population size of 53. We have 9 successes, right? 9 creatures with dredge. We have a sample size of 4 because we mill 4 cards with our Shriekhorn before we draw. And we need to hit at least 1 dredger. Looking at the probability, we have a probability of hitting 1 or more dredgers with Shriekhorn of 53.64%, which is decent, right? I think that's a decent number. So basically, if you were to keep that 7, you have a 53% chance of your game plan executing smoothly. I don't know. I'll flip a coin, right? I'm good with that. I'm on the play. It'll work out. So something to think about, right? We are learning how to judge our keeps based on the actual numbers behind everything that's going on. Very useful, I think. All right, let's go to our next scenario. Let's practice with ad nauseam. All right, so one thing that a lot of people are afraid to do is spoils for Lotus Bloom on turn 1. I do it anytime it makes sense. So if we look at this hand here, we have our combo. All we need is a fast mana piece, and we have a Spoils of the Vault. So if we Spoils for Lotus Bloom, we should have a turn 4 win, almost no problem. So let's do a calculation. How likely are we to lose 10 or less life if we Spoils for Lotus Bloom on turn 1? How many hits do we have? How many looks do we have? I'm going to give you a moment to think about that. All right, so we have 4 hits in the deck. Ad nauseam plays 4 Lotus Bloom. How many looks do we have? Well, if you remember in the question we asked losing 10 life, right? 10 or less life, that's correct. So that means we have a total of 10 looks and 4 hits. Entering that into our calculator, we can see population size 53, number of successes 4, sample size 10, number of successes in sample 1. That means we have a 57.85% chance to get Lotus Bloom into play on turn 1 with only losing 10 or less life. So that's a pretty high percent, 60%, and in doing so, you're likely to win the game, especially against an uninteractive or linear deck like Dredge, Aggro, TRON to an extent. I would definitely take this risk, right? It's sensible to take this risk, especially only 10. Like, you could go as low as like 3 life and you'd be fine. So based on the numbers, we can clearly see that spoiling for Bloom on turn 1 makes sense. Last thing I want to note is that deck mastery is really important. The better you know your deck, the better you're going to be able to make use of this hypergeometric calculator. So let's take a look at this TRON hand. We have 2 of our TRON pieces and 2 redraws at our tower. But if we draw a Sylvan Scrying on our second turn, or maybe our third turn? No, not our third turn. If we draw Sylvan Scrying on our second turn, or perhaps we draw an Ancient Stirrings, that gives us more looks, right? So you can add that to your distribution, or you can, think about that with your keep. Similarly with Cathartic Reunion, we've got this Golgari Thug in our hand. If we draw a Cathartic Reunion, that increases the ability of that hand. What am I trying to say? That makes that hand playable, right? Cathartic Reunion makes this hand playable if we don't hit a Dredger off Shriekhorn. So when you're making your keep decisions, it's really important to have a mastery of your deck so that you can think of all these scenarios. For another example, for Ad Nauseam, a lot of the time I will say, all I need is an untapped land and I'll win this game. I'll put it into my Hypergeometric calculator, and then I'll say, wait a minute, a Simian Spirit Guide, which can be exiled for a mana, could also win me the game in this scenario. So that gives me 4 additional hits, right? So the more you have a mastery of your deck, the better use you're going to make out of your calculator. And yeah, hypergeometric distributions are a great way to assess certain plays and certain keeps. Last thing I want to note, you cannot use a hypergeometric calculator at a paper tournament, as it is considered outside assistance, but it is great for practice. It's great for online Magic. It's helped me learn a lot. After a while, you kind of get a sense of, it just helps you keep better hands overall because you get to understand the mathematics behind it. All right, that's my crash course. I hope this was helpful to you. If you have any additional questions, please put them in the comments section below. Happy to answer anything about this. Happy to help anyone. I'm just here to be a resource for you. All right, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.